Mhm. Mhm. Hmm. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in just a minute or so, and we'll start at noon, giving folks, see if there's any stragglers who want to join in. Um, okay, welcome everyone today. I'm Dr. Peggy Dedermeyer. I am the Director of CARES at the Hope and Healing Center. CARES is an acronym for Caregiving, Aging, Resilience, Ethics, and Spirituality. And that describes perfectly what we do. I have spoken to this group before. I recognize some of the names. Um, I hope everyone knows what the Hope and Healing Center is and Gateway to Hope and all that good stuff. I have put a survey link in the chat for those of you who are attending today. I hope you'll be able to respond to that And if there are any of you who need continuing education credits, then do the survey and then get in touch with the folks at Gateway to Hope, and they'll help you navigate a certificate. I am talking today about putting on your own mask, oxygen mask, as in caring for yourself when you're caring for others. If I suspect many, if not all of you, have been on an airplane and have heard the flight attendant give the speech at the beginning of the flight to say that if there's a problem, the oxygen mask will come down. And if you're traveling with small children, to please put on your own oxygen mask first. So this is really important when you're a caregiver, because what many folks don't understand is the importance of caring for yourself first. I can recall meeting with someone some years ago, and I asked her a question that I frequently ask of my mentees, and which is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? And she responded to me, well, I really don't have any time to take care of myself. I am so busy of taking care of my husband and my mother and yada, yada, yada. And I looked at her and I said, okay, and now I'm going to ask you a harder question. What will happen to them if something happens to you? And she got an absolutely stricken look on her face and said, I hadn't thought of that. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this as I go along, about the importance of caring for yourself, not just so that you remain in good physical and mental health, but also because the research shows that caregivers who take care of themselves are much more likely to have positive attitudes about their caregiving responsibilities and to be better caregivers. So that's kind of a general introduction to why I think this is so important. And so we'll forge ahead. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about who is a caregiver. Those statistics are really interesting to me. We're going to talk about the consequences of caregiving. What happens when somebody becomes a caregiver? And then we're going to get into the nuts and bolts of essentials of self-care for caregiving. And then finally, I'm going to talk about engaging others in your self-care plan. That might or might not have been something you've thought about. Sometimes caregivers become caregivers because of some family dynamics and things that are going on. But it's important not only to get others to help you in your caregiving responsibilities, but to engage others in your self-care plan, so that you become liable to someone else other than yourself to report in, to talk about, well, gee, what's going on, and why are these things going the way they are? So let's get moving some more. Oops. So former First Lady Rosalynn Carter, who died not too long ago, once made the statement, there are four kinds of people in the world: those who have been caregivers, those who are currently caregivers, those who will be caregivers, and those who will need caregivers. And when you look at the facts, that's basically what happens as we age. Some folks become caregivers much younger. Certainly, we have the standard kind of caregiving we think about in terms of raising children. But in most cases, unless the child has a major disability, those children will grow up and they'll learn to take care of themselves. That's part of our task as caregivers. But the other kinds of caregiving are what we're concerning ourselves with today. And by the way, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'll try to address all the questions at the end, and I'll take the slides down and let everybody unmute themselves and chime in. So, who are caregivers? 1 in 5 adults. I have seen that statistic for a really long time, and it's interesting that that doesn't change by a lot, even with the increasing number of people having cognitive issues. Not surprisingly, 60% are women. And here I'll have an aside. Today I'm talking about all kinds of caregiving, but when folks are, and 22% of caregivers are providing care for someone with dementia, the thing to remember is that women are more likely to get dementia than men are. So when you think about the statistic that almost 2/3 of the caregivers are women, and yet women are also more likely to get cognitive issues, you kind of think about, well, who's going to take care of them? And I end up coaching a lot of men, and happily, at least in the Houston area, the Alzheimer's Association has a caregiver group dedicated to men, and the group has been in existence for a long time. They meet at St. Luke's Methodist Church, if any of you are interested, and they do a lot of really good work. About a quarter of the caregivers are 65 years or older. So if you think about someone who's aging and having caregiving issues, think about the fact that the folks who are taking care of them are also older. About 37%, or over a third, are caring for a parent or parent-in-law. So think about that. And the likelihood, if your parents or in-laws are still alive, of the likelihood that you might end up being a caregiver. Many are caregivers to both parents and children. Some of you may have heard the expression, the sandwich generation. And those are folks who have become caregivers to parents or in-laws while they're also raising their children. It's a challenge. I can tell you I was in that category when my children were very young. My dad was caregiving for my mom, who had what turned out to be terminal cancer. And but I was his support system and his caregiver. So every night of my life, I would come home from work, I would feed my family, we would do baths, put the kids to bed, and I would be on the phone to my dad to see how his day had gone and to try to support him in his work. Half of caregivers have provided care for more than 2 years. So it's not just a transitory situation where somebody is sick and they get better, and so the caregiving responsibilities subside. And about a third provide care more than 20 hours a week. So if you look at some of these statistics, to me, they're just mind-boggling. Because it says that a large segment of our population is having to serve this caregiving role. And when they're in that role, there are other things that aren't getting done. There have been statistics that billions of dollars of the economy are actually not realized because of caregiver responsibilities, or the costs of those caregiving responsibilities on the other work responsibilities that those individuals have. So what do caregivers do? And this is where it gets really interesting, because when you think about the different tasks that caregivers have to do. Um, it's and I've we could brainstorm this and probably come up with another dozen or so tasks. But there's nursing, there's financial planning or management that has to happen, chauffeuring responsibilities to take people on their errands or to doctor's appointments, household tasks, decision making for those who have cognitive issues, medication management. That's a big deal because a lot of folks who have chronic or life limiting illnesses also have a pretty significant medication regime they have to take. Personal care and hygiene. When somebody has cognitive issues, they're just not likely to remember that personal care and hygiene is an important part of staying well. It's also a problem with people who have mobility issues. So think about that in terms of the different responsibilities that come. And finally, time management. That's a really big responsibility because folks with cognitive issues or even folks who have lots of doctor's appointments, they may not be able to keep track of all the different places they have to be and when they have to be there. And remember, I said chauffeuring becomes an important responsibility. Certainly in the Houston area, transportation is an issue. We have a public transportation system, but unfortunately, it doesn't always serve folks in the areas where they live. And so somebody has to get those folks to their appointments. So when caregivers have all of these extra responsibilities on top of their family management and jobs, it may affect when they can't work as much, their financial security and their income. It may affect their planned future or their children's planned future. It will affect their companionship and their ability to socialize and do stuff with their friends. One of the things I emphasize with caregivers I work with is that they are allowed to continue to do some of their own activities, not only for their own mental and physical health, but also for their own skills, their identity. Think of the identity that you have, where in addition to being Johnny's mother, you're also your mom's or dad's or in-laws or even siblings caregiver, and your roles change. So one of the things I hear a lot from people is, my husband and I used to be good friends and we can't be that anymore. And I feel like I'm more his parent. And parenting your parents is a whole nother conversation. And then your free time, and we've already kind of touched on the socialization and communication. So what happens then to caregivers? They may have an unpredictable sleep schedule. They may become easily irritated or angered, that things start to bother you. You may not eat well, so you may gain or lose weight, or have migraines, other physical manifestations like migraines and body aches. And then, as we talked about, the feeling isolated or deserted because you have this obligation that you have, and your inability to extract yourself from that circumstance so that you can engage in self-care. And so as a result, people end up in poor physical health. One of the things, I'm a former hospital chaplain, and I would have instances where the spouse had been the caregiver for the person who was in the hospital with a terminal or life-limiting illness, and they were having to make decisions for their person, and then that person would collapse from their own inability to watch out for their own health, the financial insecurity when your caregiver, either from giving up your own job or other things that happen when you're a caregiver. And I summarize that with the sadness, the stress, anxiety, and depression of being a caregiver and the things that can happen. There are a whole bunch of different signs of caregiver stress. I've already talked about sleep, the fact that people's sleep habits are affected, making medication mistakes, because medications have, certain times of day they have to be administered, and things happen so that people do make mistakes and they feel terrible when that happens. But when you're not in your own world of trying to manage things, you may not think about or remember all the things you have to do. Feeling unable to complete daily tasks. I've already talked about mental health, depression, issues with eating, of eating not enough or eating too much, anxiety. People who are caregivers are at a higher risk for chronic diseases themselves. That's just a fact. Most importantly, the social withdrawal and losing interest in activities that the individual used to enjoy. All of these things play out when a person is so attached to their caregiver responsibilities that they're not thinking about the things they have to do to take care of themselves. So what are some different stress relievers? Certainly talking to other caregivers or joining a caregiver support group. The Hope and Healing Center has a bunch of different groups. We have an Alzheimer's caregiver support group. We have a general caregiver support group. There are various support groups around Houston. If you're not in Houston, I encourage you to research the different groups that churches have, or the Alzheimer's Association or the Parkinson's Association. All of those different kinds of resources. And I would encourage you, if you can't find them, and my phone number and my colleague's phone number are at the end of this presentation, which you will have access to, and you can certainly contact us for advice. Or if you are peer coaching somebody, we can certainly point you in the right direction and help you identify some of these different groups or how to find them in your area. Asking friends and family for help. Lots of times you may have a friend who says, let me know if there's something I can do. And it's hard in the moment sometimes to think up something, but it's also okay. And if you're coaching somebody, to say to them, well, if somebody's offering to help, say, how about if you bring dinner next Thursday? Or how about if you come sit with mom for a few hours so that I can take a break, or I can go to my own doctor's appointment, or I can do fill in the blank. It's okay to ask for help, and it's very okay to encourage people to figure out places and spaces where they need help and to ask for that help. Exercise, even just taking a short walk down the street or around your house is helpful. When you exercise, I'm sure all of you have heard, it releases endorphins, and it's really good for you to do that physical activity to keep yourself moving and to keep yourself from getting tied down in one space. This is, one of my favorite stress relievers. Have reasonable expectations. And my note on that is don't should on yourself. it's not helpful to go, I should be, or I should do, or I should do this better. Those are not helpful comments for yourself, certainly in terms of your own mental health or for the folks you are coaching. Focus on what you can do. You know, what does, if you're caregiving for your mom and she likes to garden, find a little a way to do something with the gardening, even if you have to take a chair outside and to take your mom out there. Let her sit down at a table and pot a plant or do something that she enjoys doing. Learn about the disease progression from others. And this is easier said than done because doctors are sometimes too busy. But what I encourage you to do, and for you to encourage your peer mentees to do, is to either talk to many doctors' offices now have either social workers or nurses who are dedicated folks to answering questions. And one of the things my own dad had a hard time with when he was caregiving for his second wife who had an Alzheimer's diagnosis, he said, nobody will tell me what to expect. And sadly, he lived in a fairly small town, and so there weren't the resources that we have here in Houston. What I tried to encourage him to do was to get involved in some things online. And the really good thing now, post-pandemic, is there are a lot of resources that are available virtually. There are different support groups, there are different educational things. And, you know, my husband and I, when we go to our own doctor, we laugh about Dr. Google. But there are a lot of good resources online, and you just have to learn to separate the wheat from the chaff in terms of what are good resources and what are not. Another stress reliever is to spend time alone. Just go off in a corner. You can read, enjoy music, you can meditate, you can do breathing exercises. Those are all things that are doable for short periods of time. And when I teach the Caregivers Corner class, which is a dedicated 5-week virtual program for teaching dementia caregivers, I encourage people to think about the things that they can do and to be proactive about identifying them, because there's almost always a time where you can escape for 15 or 30 minutes and do things to take care of yourself. Set a routine. You know, one of the things that happens when folks have either chronic or dementia type illnesses is routines are a good thing. And if you can, to the degree that you're able to set a schedule so that you say, okay, between 9:30 and 10, I will help mom get dressed for the day and do the things she needs to do. When it gets a little bit later and mom is, after she's had her lunch and she sometimes takes a little rest, I'm going to use that time to do something that I need to do to take care of me. Connecting with caregiver resources in your community. There are lots of things going on. I've already mentioned caregiver support groups. They're very helpful. Lots of organizations now are doing caregiver classes, either virtually or in person. For those of you who are in Houston, the Institute on Aging is doing an all-day caregiver class on Saturday, August 24th. That's free and open to the public. So take a look around at those things. Care Partners, which is another caregiving organization in Houston, sponsors a half-day caregiver seminar. Again, it's open to people from the public. They don't charge for it. That will be at St. Luke's Methodist Church in October. If you need the exact date, shoot me an email and I'll let you know the specific date. So when we do all of these things, try to stay away from, and trust me, I know how hard this is. I've been a caregiver. I know the challenges of trying to work a job and manage your children and take care of yourself. But certainly try to stay away from things that are not helpful. Things like, I made a mistake. I'm a total failure. No, you're not. You are doing the best that you can under the circumstances that you are doing them. And so to look in the mirror and say, I am doing the best that I can. I'm a good person. Something always goes wrong is a kind of an overgeneralization. Stuff goes wrong. Things are going to go wrong. If any of you have any doubts, read Kate Bowler's 2 books, Everything Happens for a Reason and Other Lies I've Loved, and No Cure for Being Human and Other Truths I Need to Hear. Those are terrific resources that help you to see the things that we have just by virtue of the fact that we're human. To have a disqualifying the positive of saying, oh, the disease is going to come back. Well, it may come back, but for the moment, I have a good news. Enjoy that. My family has no desire to help. Your family may not be able to help on the terms that you want, but there are lots of things that you need that I would encourage you to identify and to say to them, gee, I'm wondering if you could commit to calling Mom every Saturday for an hour. She'd love to hear your voice, even if she's cognitively missing some of the things. She loves to hear your voice and she loves you. So encourage people to help to the degree that they are willing to on their terms. This will never get easier. Well, it probably won't get easier, but just dwelling on that will not be helpful. I'm feeling so overwhelmed. I know I'm letting my family down. That gets back to the woulda, shoulda, coulda. There's absolutely no help in shoulding on yourself. So I encourage you to think and dwell on the positive. I should be able to keep it together. We've already talked about shoulding on yourself. And then I'm totally incompetent. That serves no useful purpose. It's always better to accentuate the positive, as in, I am doing the best that I can. And that's what I will continue to do. So Viktor Frankl, some of you may have been introduced to his name. He's a psychiatrist, and he's a long time ago, during the Second World War, he was in a concentration camp, and he looked around at the people who did the best under these absolutely horrific circumstances. And he found that people who were able to have a positive approach and to make meaning did infinitely better than people who were always woe is me. And so his summary statement is, when we're no longer able to change a situation, we're challenged to change ourselves. And yes, that's easier said than done, but I'm going to talk a little bit about different things to do. The essence of self-care is, first of all, resilience, the ability to bounce back after things are happening in your life that you would not choose to have happen. So in practicing your resiliency skills, or in coaching someone to improve their resiliency skills, invite them to name their challenges. Also invite the person and yourself to practice both and thinking. I am both a caregiver and a person with my own needs. Never, ever, ever get away from the fact that you yourself or the caregiver is an individual that has their own needs. Um, Identify your support systems, whether it's family help, it's information resources, or other resources. And some areas now even have, as part of the area agencies on aging, they have caregiver segments that are doing really cool stuff. Um, Rethink how you do family holidays, celebrations, and rituals. If you had a practice where every year on your mom's birthday, you got together with 30 or 40 people and had a big blowout celebration, it was great fun. But if someone has a chronic or dementia related illness, that may not be the best way to celebrate. It might be better to have more smaller celebrations or to scale something back, so that you revisit how you do things with the person with the chronic or life limiting illness so that they can still enjoy and feel celebrated, but not be overwhelmed. And that may mean revising family roles. You know, my sister was always the fill in the blank. Try to scale those kind of expectations back so that you don't feel bound to them. Appreciate how resilience helps you to handle stress. And so there are resilience skills, viewing setbacks as impermanent, recognizing things are going to go wrong, but what am I going to learn from this? Focusing on events you can control, and then most importantly, to manage the effects of stress on your life and on your mentee's life. So, practical things, sleep, take take a nap with your devices off, eating well, including, and remember I said some people eat too much or don't eat enough. If you're eating too much, pick and choose the things that you enjoy most. Hydrate well, and that means with water, not adult drinks, as we say. Build movement into your day. Take a stroll, whether it's around your neighborhood or a nearby park, or even the local mall where it's air conditioned in the summer and you don't have to get miserable by being outside in 100-degree plus heat. Reconnect with your soulful side, whether that's prayer, meditation, going to public services, going in a corner and doing some meditation, doing a mindfulness walk when you go out walking, dancing for some people. All of those things are things that can help you to feel better. Soulful interactions usually aren't about tackling problems and changing outcomes. In other words, fixing. You can't fix things. Some things have to be endured. But they are, particularly for those who are peer coaches who are helping others along their journeys. It is about being what I call a companion on the way, a sojourner. And that can be infinitely valuable to people. Even if you can't fix their challenges, you can be a companion on the way. And that means having a non-judgmental, compassionate, non-anxious presence for them. And I can tell you, as a hospital chaplain, many times I would get called to a challenging circumstance, and I would spend my walk from my office in the chaplain's office to the ICU or the ER or wherever the challenge was occurring, practicing some deep breathing so I wouldn't walk into the room looking like a bucket of anxiety. Practice those yourself. I've already talked about taking a nap when necessary, eating well, and hydrating. These are just pictorial descriptions of all of the things I've just talked about. Join a support group or take classes. Sometimes different groups will have classes. I've already mentioned several that are happening in Houston over the next several months. If you're not in Houston, ask around. Check the local community bulletin board, check with the area agency on aging, and see what kinds of opportunities are available to do something different. Asking for help. We've talked about having a schedule and establishing routines. All these are things you can do to help yourself and to help your caregiver to help themselves. These last few minutes, I'm going to concentrate on your own responsibility to yourself. So, as caregivers, whether it's a direct caregiver or a caregiver for other caregivers or multiple roles we find ourselves in, we have 6 domains: the body, the mind, emotional, relationship, and work, and spiritual. So, all of these things that you can do to think about how you're going to care for yourself. In that, pick one area. For example, for your mind, read something that's not work or caregiving related. Read something fun, whether it's a mystery book or a romance novel or whatever, something, but read something that you enjoy that's not related to the work that you're doing, either professionally or as a caregiver. Identify an activity that you would like to incorporate regularly. Say, I want to go for a 20-minute walk every afternoon. So in doing that, make it what I call a SMART goal: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. An example would be, I'm going to go to at least 3 fun events over the next 6 months, at least one of which is without my kids. So you set a goal and you say, I am going to be intentional about taking care of myself. And here's the thing to think about. What's going to keep you from achieving your goals? Maybe you can't count on the fact that you will have 20 minutes every afternoon, but you can say, I'm going to have as a goal to take a 20-minute walk every afternoon. And if I miss it, I'm not going to beat myself up. So I'm not going to feel guilty about it. I'm not going to say I'm a terrible person. I'm not going to say I can't do anything because I'm always overwhelmed. I am going to forgive myself when I don't get it right the first time. So here's the thing to do differently. Find somebody that can be your accountability body. And it can be a friend, it can be a coworker, it can be another caregiver that you've met through a caregiver support group. And you are going to set a check-in and you're going to share your plan with that person, and with the intent that that person will become a helper and supportive of your self-care efforts. So you say to them, I want to take a 20-minute walk every afternoon. And you can ask the person if they are able to go with you, have them go with you. If not, say, hold me accountable and check in with me, not to beat me up for not doing it, but to encourage me to continue to do these things that I need to do to take care of myself so that I can be a better caregiver. Um, keep keep working this kind of a plan. Go from baby steps to bigger steps. Check in regularly with your partner. Share it with others on how you've been successful, and do stuff. Keep building on your successes, but don't beat yourself up if you miss the mark. That's really important because as caregivers, we never want to be able to just not accentuate the positive. Remember, I said at the beginning that people who have a better approach, a more positive approach, do better themselves. Um, Caregivers, this is a fact. It's known. People who care for themselves remain in better physical and mental health. And here at the Hope and Healing Center, we're all about having better mental health for folks. But remaining healthy yourself will make you a more effective caregiver, whether, as I said, you're a direct caregiver or you're coaching those who are caregivers. I'll stop for questions in a minute. Here's the contact information for Seth Stander and myself. Seth is our community aging specialist. He's a former pulpit rabbi who has now been at the Hope and Healing Center for 3 years. I'm a former business person turned hospital chaplain who went to UTMB and got a PhD in healthcare ethics and policy. So I can do a lot of work with folks who have care planning issues. I do a lot of coaching for caregivers. As I said, I've been a caregiver myself, so I've walked the walk. And that I think, yep, that's it. I know you'll have access to these slides after today's presentation. And now I will stop sharing. And it looks like there are a bunch of questions in the chat. So I will take a look at the chat and see what we have. Okay. The post survey link, somebody told me they weren't able to see it. I'll ask Perla to send it out to you. Can it be? Oh, it's okay. Perla's already reposted it. Great. Thanks, Perla. Keeping my parents fed with nutritious foods while I'm at work during the day is my hardest task, as well as myself, of course. Of course, it's a lot. Absolutely. I would encourage you, if you're preparing the meals for your parents, to prepare smaller things that they can, all they have to do is either heat it in the microwave. I, since I'm a working human being and I love to cook, but I don't always have time to cook well. I have found if you're in Houston, the HEB Meal Simple are very good. They're things that either get popped in the oven for 20 or 30 minutes or you microwave, and they have lots of good salads and stuff. Our church has been a lifeline for us. The other ladies help me with things I need for my parents. Absolutely. Some churches have an extended outreach for caregivers. There in Houston, there's also a group called Community of Hope, which is a group that provides emotional and spiritual support. The folks, some of them have daytime jobs, but they still do this on the side. Some churches have, here at St. Martin's, they have a Shepherd's Guild that helps folks with various issues. When I was at the cathedral, we had a group that would help folks with regular meals if they needed that kind of help, but with different things. So check with your churches and see what they have going. Even smaller churches will oftentimes have a hardy group of volunteers who are willing to work. When I was doing one caregiving class a couple of years back, one of the attendees, they had a handyman that came and helped, and it turned out he was able to relate really well to her husband, who had fairly advanced dementia. And so she would pay him to come in for a few hours a week just to keep her husband company so she could do stuff. Findhelp.org is a good site to connect. There are a bunch of good sites. One of the things we have here at the Hope and Healing Center is we call it the CARES Resources. It's a pamphlet of about 10 to 12 pages that answers all kinds of different questions. And I tell people it's not meant to be comprehensive, but it's the product of 8 years of people asking me questions in my responsibilities here at the Hope and Healing Center. Amazing Place offers resources, support groups, and education. Absolutely. In Houston, Care Partners does the same thing. Care Partners, both Amazing Place and Care Partners, have a daycare center for people with dementia. Care Partners is a little different in that they will accept people for a longer period of time into the disease process. So, and they also have all kinds of support groups and classes. Somebody posted a link to Amazing Place. Our church in Minnesota has a vibrant caregivers group. Faith-based groups add the advantage of spiritual support. Absolutely. Different churches have different options and they have taken different approaches. So I've already mentioned the Shepherds Guild here at St. Martin's. I've mentioned the Community of Hope here in Houston. There's a group called Institute for Spirituality and Health, where they train lay volunteers to go into nursing homes for folks who are unbefriended. Those are just wonderful resources, and their work is so valuable and so important. And ISH also has the Institute for Spirituality and Health also has a virtual mind-body support group, one that meets on Mondays and one that meets on Wednesdays. And when I talked about doing some meditation and mindfulness things for yourself to take care of yourself, those are great resources and they're free. When will the slide presentation be made available? I would love to have a copy of the slides. Yes, Perla answered that and said an email will be sent out with access to the presentation. And there will be instructions on how to get access. Do we get Hannah? Yes, well, same question. I'm a terrible cook. The HEB dinners are very good. I agree. I tend to get those for them often. Absolutely. I wouldn't say we would starve without them, but certainly we would eat less well. And they periodically have a coupon sale. So if you buy, you get a few dollars off if you buy 2 or 3 dinners. So any other questions or comments on self-care? Could there be more information on who qualifies as a caregiver outside of those who care for those? My definition for a caregiver is anybody who's looking after somebody for something. And it doesn't matter whether it's a chronic illness or a life-limiting illness or just somebody who has a mental illness. Certainly, I hope those of you who are peer mental health coaches know about and are working in churches or faith communities where you're developing support groups for those, what I call the transformed groups, the hearts transformed, minds transformed, and families transformed. All of those. And it doesn't, even somebody who's raising a child is a caregiver. The difference is, in most cases, when you're raising a child, you're raising them to let go. When you're taking care of someone with a life-limiting illness, you don't let go until they die. If you're taking care of someone with dementia, dementia is a progressive disorder that will continue to get worse, and you can never anticipate them getting better. So having that outreach and being intentional about taking care of yourself while you're taking care of them will help both of you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? As I said, I'm happy if any of you are affiliated with a group where you would like one of us to do a caregiving talk for your faith community or for your, if you're not in Houston, we're happy to do that with the grace of Zoom, if Zoom is working. I We do all kinds of classes. Financial help for those who need caregiving. Okay. So I invite all of you. So one of the best kept secrets as part of Medicare and Medicaid services is the Area Agency on Aging. And they are in every community in the United States. They also keep track of a lot of resources, including caregiving resources. And in our CARES resources, we have some different nonprofit groups. There's one called Hilarity for Charity that was started by a comic, a well-known national comic. The challenge is they run out of money pretty fast, but they do have some resources. And but start with the Area Agency on Aging and ask them what sources they know about. Because in some cases, you do have to hire a caregiver and you can't just rely on your church friends or your family members to help you with caregiving. So start with that. I don't promise you'll always be successful, but you may find that opportunity that just isn't well publicized because there are not enough resources to go around. Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Well, it's been my honor to speak with you today. Like I said, you'll have my phone number and you have my email address. I will be starting another session of Caregivers Corner, which is the 5-week caregiver course for those with caregiving for people with dementia. It will be starting October 7th and be at 10 o'clock in the morning for 5 weeks. So going through November 6th, we usually meet for about an hour and a half. Sometimes it goes to 2 hours. I allow 2 hours, but an hour and a half is usually a good time. And you can go to our website and get the link and register for that. That'll be on Zoom. Anything else today? All right. Well, I think I'll close it out for today. Please let me know what we can be helpful with. If you have a challenge with one of your peer mentees, give us a holler and we'll try to point you in the right direction. God's blessings to everybody. I can send the link for Caregiver Corner to Perla and she can share it with y'all when she sends out the thing. All right. Have a good weekend.